Deniese Shalize Hiraman was born on October 6, 1985, in Albuistown, Guyana. At just 5 years old, she moved with her family to the United States and settled in Richmond Hill, Queens, a neighborhood now known as Little Guyana due to its large Indo-Caribbean population. Deniese was raised on 109th Street alongside her parents and two older brothers, surrounded by community, culture, and the hope of a better life. She was sometimes known as Pinky or Pinks, and her mother, Sita Baran, described her as vibrant, full of energy, and eager to express herself. By age 13, Deniese had started spending time with what some described as a rebellious crowd. She had friends who smoked, skipped school, and were involved in risky behavior. Her mother did her best to guide her, but raising a child in America after growing up with Guyanese parenting values came with its own challenges. In Guyana, strict discipline was common, but in the U.S., cultural and legal differences often made such discipline difficult. Some believe Deniese took advantage of this freedom, possibly pushing boundaries in a way her parents were never allowed to. On the morning of August 27, 1999, Deniese left home around 8 a.m. to catch the bus to school at Jamaica and Marco Avenues. Her mother, already at work, wasn't immediately worried when the school called to say Deniese hadn't arrived because she had skipped before. But when she didn't come home later that day and couldn't be found at any of her usual spots, her brother and mother began to panic. They drove around looking for her, called friends, and eventually contacted police. But instead of launching a full investigation, the NYPD labeled Deniese a runaway, and no Amber Alert was issued. Denise's neighbor and close friend, Shalize Sankar, disappeared nearly a year later in 2000. Shellyann was 21 and originally from Trinidad. She and Deniese lived in the same building, one on the first floor, the other on the second, and over the years had become like sisters. Shellyann was working as a real estate agent and reportedly vanished after going to show a home. She never returned. Her family, living in Trinidad, never heard from her again. With no relatives in the U.S., no one could officially file a missing persons report, except for Denise's mother, Sita, who tried. But police allegedly turned her away, even threatening to arrest her if she came back. Both girls had known a man named Rudolph Mahendra Balgobin, who was Shellyann's boyfriend at the time. He was 31 years old in 1999, significantly older than both girls, and described as shady and controlling. He would buy them ice cream, walk them home, and hang around with them far too comfortably. When Deniese first went missing, both Shellyann and Balgobin helped search for her, but after Shellyan's disappearance, suspicions grew. Years later, in 2008, Balgobin was arrested in Florida for the murder of his then-girlfriend, 26-year-old Melissa Jean Oberwise. He reportedly lured Melissa with promises of a job in real estate, eerily similar to Shellyan's profession. In 2010, Balgobin was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life and remains incarcerated with a projected release date in 2034. While in prison, Balgobin allegedly sent Sita 2 letters asking her to send him $200 in exchange for information about Deniese. She reported this to the police, but nothing came of it. No follow-up, no interrogation, no renewed investigation. As of 2025, he remains the only person believed to hold the answers to what happened to both Deniese and Shellyann. In 2005, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reclassified Denise's case from a runaway to endangered missing, finally acknowledging the seriousness of her disappearance. A forensic age progression was created that shows what Deniese might look like at age 38. Sita keeps that image close, hoping every day for someone to come forward with the truth. The case has been marked by inaction, neglect, and painful silence. What started as the disappearance of a teenage girl from Queens has become a decades-long saga of heartbreak, injustice, and unanswered questions. As of June 2025, Deniese Hiraman and Shellyann Sankar remain missing, and their cases remain unsolved. Kathleen Patricia Haley, known to her loved ones as Kathy, was 37 years old when she disappeared from Newport News, Virginia, in early September 2012. At the time, she lived alone in an apartment on the 2800 block of West Avenue and was described as a private person who kept much of her life, including her place of employment, to herself. She worked late nights as a dancer at Headlights, a gentleman's club in Portsmouth, but she never told her family the name of the club or even that she worked in that industry. On September 1st, 2012, Kathy spoke to her sister by phone and said she would stop by later. She also mentioned she had other plans that evening. She then failed to show up at her sister's and was never seen or heard from again. 6 days later, on September 7th, her family reported her missing. When officers conducted a welfare check at her apartment, what they found was disturbing. Her bed, mattress, frame, and all was gone. So was her computer and a section of carpet in the bedroom, which appeared to have been cut out and removed. Cleaning supplies and several pairs of rubber gloves were found in the bathroom, and there was blood on the bedroom wall and door. In a laundry basket, police found clothing stained with blood. There was also more than one mattress found nearby with brown stains on them. One was reportedly discovered in a dumpster not far from the complex. Kathy's car was still in the parking lot, but the doors were unlocked, something her family said was completely out of character. The driver's seat was pushed all the way back, suggesting someone much taller than Kathy had been driving. Police believe whoever left the car there was not her. One key witness told police they saw a white male with blonde hair entering and exiting Kathy's apartment with a key on September 4th, 3 days after she was last seen. The man was also seen walking to a dumpster carrying something large and rolled up, possibly bedding. A composite sketch of the man was released to the public, but he has never been identified. Adding to the mystery was the disappearance of Kathy's dog, a boxer named Molly, who vanished along with her. Molly was elderly at the time and not likely to pose a threat, but the fact that both woman and dog went missing without a trace points to someone Kathy likely knew, someone Molly wouldn't have barked at. Kathy's family acknowledged that while she was private and could sometimes go a few days without checking in, she always called her mother at least once or twice a week. She had been acting completely normal in the days leading up to her disappearance, and no one sensed anything was wrong. She had a boyfriend who had recently moved to Germany, but there was no indication of any conflict or ongoing issues between them, and he's never been named a suspect. There has been no activity on Kathy's phone, bank accounts, or credit cards since September 1st. Police interviewed staff at Headlights, but no solid leads came from those conversations. Some have speculated that Kathy may have met someone through a dating site, which could explain the missing computer. They also believe the bed was removed to conceal physical evidence of a violent assault or even murder. The level of cleanup suggests planning and a possible effort to delay discovery until after trash pickup. What's most haunting is how much evidence there was, but how it all seemed to lead nowhere. Blood, a man seen entering with a key, a rolled-up item carried to a dumpster, yet no arrest, no body, and no clear motive. The scene suggests something terrible happened in her apartment, and whoever the man was, he likely knows exactly what happened to Kathy. There's also no evidence to suggest that Kathy was involved in anything criminal or high risk. Kathleen Haley went missing on September 1st, 2012, and as of May 2025, she remains missing. The suspect remains unidentified, and this case remains unsolved. Kevin Lamont McClam was born on April 2, 1982, in Indianapolis, Indiana. At 14 years old, he was living with his family in Goose Creek, South Carolina, inside the Charleston Naval Weapons Station, where his family was stationed with the U.S. Navy in 1997. On the night of March 29, 1997, Kevin was at home playing video games with his younger sister. When their mother returned home, she and Kevin spoke for a bit before she and Kevin's sister headed off to bed. Kevin told his mom he was going to stay up and continue playing games. But when they woke up the next morning, Kevin was gone. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle, and he had seemingly vanished without a trace. After that night, he was never seen or heard from again. 2 days later, Kevin's clothing was discovered at a nearby construction site. The articles were spread out along a road, roughly 5 to 10 feet apart. The clothing had spray paint on it, but there were no signs of a struggle or indication of how it got there. Witnesses later reported seeing someone matching Kevin's description walking along a dirt road near the construction site on the afternoon of March 30th, the day after he disappeared. The individual was reportedly wearing only boxer shorts and sneakers and appeared to be alone and not in distress. Kevin's mother said it was extremely out of character for her son to leave without telling anyone. He never missed a meal and always came home before dark. He was an 8th grader at Merrington Middle School, a well-liked student who was known to be responsible. He didn't use drugs and enjoyed playing basketball. His mother theorized that Kevin may have sneaked out to meet friends that night, but all of his friends denied seeing him. Years passed with no answers, but in early 2006, authorities announced they were treating Kevin's case as a homicide after receiving new forensic evidence and public tips. In October of that year, they conducted a search for Kevin's remains in Goose Creek, but nothing was found. Then in December 2006, police named a suspect, a man by the name of Thomas McCardle, who was serving time for unrelated robbery charges. Around the same time, another man named Michael Moorcroft allegedly bragged that he and McCardle were involved in Kevin's death. Both McCardle and Moorcroft would have been teenagers at the time Kevin vanished. Moorcroft later recanted, claiming he had fabricated the story, but cadaver dogs signaled the possible presence of human remains under a shed at Moorcroft's childhood home. When investigators excavated the area, however, they found nothing of evidentiary value. Some theorized that he might have gotten lost in the tunnels beneath Charleston, which are located near the naval base where he lived. Allegedly, kids would play hide-and-seek there. The tunnels were built in the mid-1800s and are part of an extensive system of brick arches that were used for drainage and sewage disposal. They spanned 10 miles and were built to remove infected waste away from the city during the yellow fever epidemic. There has long been rumors of dead bodies in the tunnels, but that's been widely debunked. Kevin's family left South Carolina in 1998 and moved to Georgia, still clinging to hope for answers. Kevin McClam went missing on March 30th, 1997, and as of June 2025, he remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. Nancy Charlene Corporon, known by her middle name Charlene, was born on July 10, 1933, in the quiet coastal town of Palacios, Texas. By 1982, she was a 48-year-old mother, businesswoman, and pillar of her small community. After the accidental death of her husband, Charlene and her only son, Gary, ran a successful agricultural business together. She was tough, independent, and respected, but that life came to a sudden and brutal end. In August of 1982, Charlene was found shot in the head inside her own bedroom. The bullets were fragmented, later identified as .22 caliber, and offered little forensic value. The discovery came after Charlene's boyfriend called the house and was met with a strange and unsettling response from Gary. "Charlene doesn't look too good." When police arrived, they found her dead on the bed. Almost immediately, suspicion circled two men, her boyfriend and her son. Family and friends told police that Gary had been physically abusive toward his mother. One former employee even claimed to have overheard Gary threatening to kill her. At the same time, Charlene's friends said she had been planning to end her relationship with her boyfriend, raising another possible motive. Prosecutors took the case to a grand jury, hoping to have Gary indicted on murder charges. But what happened next defied belief. Law enforcement left the courtroom under the impression that the grand jury had declined to indict Gary. The explanation that there just wasn't enough evidence. Gary had been arrested and released on a $100,000 bail, but after that, nothing happened. No trial, no hearing, no movement. The case slipped through the cracks, and for more than 3 decades, it stayed that way. Then, in 2013, a new sheriff in Matagorda County decided to take a second look at 5 cold cases. That decision brought in the cold justice team, including former prosecutor Kelly Siegler, investigator Yolanda McClary, and homicide detective Johnny Bonds. What they discovered shook the entire community. On September 20th, 1982, Gary Corporon had, in fact, been indicted for murder by a grand jury. The indictment was never rejected and had been approved all along, but somehow it disappeared from the official record. The district clerk, Becky Den, confirmed there was no trace of it in their system, and neither the former sheriff nor the district attorney from 1982 would comment. For 31 years, Gary Corporon lived freely, reportedly working offshore in Louisiana. He had paid his bail, but the case had been abandoned. No trial date had ever been set. No court proceedings were scheduled. In a small town where everyone knew everyone, how could something this major be lost? Was it a mistake or something more? Locals whispered about the good old boy network, unofficial protections, buried evidence, and secrets exchanged behind closed doors. Some speculated whether money from Gary's bail or even a life insurance payout had been split or misused. Others questioned whether Charlene's murder was ever meant to be prosecuted at all. The cold justice team also uncovered new witness statements. Several people came forward claiming they saw Gary Corporon with a .22 caliber rifle just weeks before Charlene's murder. One man remembered Gary showing it off on a fishing trip. The weapon was never recovered, but the timing and the caliber matched. In one particularly personal moment, Siegler visited her father's barbershop, still decorated with signs she had made as a child. He knew the Corporons. He knew the boyfriend. In a place like Palacios, where everyone knows everyone, it made the failure of justice all the more surreal. Despite the media attention and renewed investigation, the case has remained stuck. As of June 2025, there is still no trial date set for Gary Wayne Corporon. Rumors now swirl that he may avoid prosecution altogether by invoking his right to a speedy trial, arguing that the government's delay, not his, denied him justice. Under Texas law, that defense could work, and if it does, it would mean that a murder indictment from 1982, a case where the suspect was arrested, indicted, and released, might never reach a courtroom, not because he was found innocent, but because the justice system simply forgot. This wasn't a mystery that took decades to solve. It was a case that had already been solved, then swept under the rug. Regardless of all that information, as of June 2025, Nancy Charlene Corporon's murder remains unsolved, and the primary suspect remains a free man. Sandra Mary Jacobson, known to her loved ones as Sandy, was born on December 8, 1959, to Henry and Bernice Grensteiner. By 1996, she was living in the small town of Center, North Dakota, a quiet rural community in Oliver County. Sandy worked for the North Dakota Department of Transportation and was the mother of 2 sons, 16-year-old Spencer Nastrom from her first marriage, and 5-year-old John Jacobson, her child with her estranged second husband, Alan Jacobson. On the evening of November 16, 1996, Sandy and little John were on their way to Bismarck, about 40 miles away, to have dinner at her parents' home. But something strange happened on the way there, something that would leave behind more questions than answers. At some point during the drive, Sandy called the Bismarck Police Department from her cell phone. She was agitated, rambling, and claimed there was satanic ritual abuse taking place at a farm near Center. When asked why she didn't contact local authorities, she said she didn't trust the Center Police or the Oliver County Sheriff's Office. Sandy and John arrived at her mother Bernice's house around 7:30 p.m., but Bernice could immediately tell that something was wrong. Sandy was behaving erratically and appeared to be in the middle of a mental health crisis. She had a documented history of mental illness, and after some discussion, she agreed to check herself into the hospital. But before doing so, she insisted on taking her car to fill it up and promised she'd be right back. Sandy and John left in her gray 1990 Honda Civic, and neither were ever seen again. By 10 p.m., concerned that they hadn't returned, Bernice called the police. The following day, Sandy's car was discovered abandoned at Centennial Beach in Bismarck, near the banks of the Missouri River. The driver's side door was left open, the keys were still in the ignition, and her purse, with its contents undisturbed, was sitting on the front seat. A gas receipt confirmed she had in fact stopped to fuel up, just as she said she would. Nearby, police found a child's shoe, possibly belonging to John, but his brother Spencer and grandmother didn't recognize it and thought it looked too big for him. Authorities launched a search along the riverbank and deployed dive teams into the Missouri River, but freezing temperatures, ice, and swift currents made it nearly impossible to conduct a full search. 6 months later, another child's shoe was found in the same area, but it too could not be definitively linked to John. In the days that followed, attention turned towards Sandy's estranged husband, Alan Jacobson. The couple had separated 3 months earlier. Sandy reportedly believed divorce proceedings were underway, but investigators later learned that no paperwork had been filed. Alan told police he had been on a business trip in Missouri from November 16th to the 18th. He refused to provide a DNA sample and was generally uncooperative. He claimed that he and Sandy had recently begun couples counseling in hopes of reconciling, but records show he never attended a single session. After Sandy and John vanished, Alan went to her trailer and cleared it out, taking food, clothing, and other personal items before it could be searched. When asked about Sandy's journal, which family members claimed she diligently wrote in, he vehemently denied having seen it. To this day, it has never been recovered. Spencer later reported that not long after the disappearance, he saw his mother's wedding rings inside a coin container in Alan's home. He wasn't sure if she had been wearing them that night, but the sight of them there struck him as suspicious. Alan denied ever taking them and claimed Sandy had left them with him when they separated. Adding to the mystery, just hours before she vanished, Sandy attempted to call her ex-husband, Vernon Nastrom, Spencer's father. Vernon later told police that years earlier, Sandy had developed a fixation on end-of-the-world scenarios. She once suggested that if the world were ending, they should meet at the Memorial Bridge in Bismarck and jump together. That same bridge was just a short distance from where her car was later found. Vernon said that over time, Sandy had changed her views and no longer believed in taking one's own life, thinking it would condemn a person's soul to wander the earth. He fully cooperated with the investigation and was ruled out as a suspect. Tragically, Vernon himself became the victim of a violent unsolved crime. In 2005, nearly a decade after Sandy's disappearance, Vernon was run over by someone driving his car and left to die in a ditch near Tuttle, North Dakota. His murder remains unsolved. One prevailing theory is that Sandy, in a state of mental distress, may have killed her son and then taken her own life in the river, but there's no direct evidence to support that theory. No bodies have ever been recovered, no signs of violence or foul play were found, and while her behavior on the night she vanished was undeniably concerning, some believe there's more to the story than a mental health crisis. Some have questioned why Sandy was allowed to leave alone with John that night, given her obvious mental state. Others wonder if someone used her vulnerability to their advantage, perhaps staging her disappearance to make it look like she took her own life and her son's life. Meanwhile, the pain and uncertainty continued for Spencer. After his mother vanished, he was raised by his grandparents. At the time of her disappearance, Sandy was 5 foot 5 inches, about 145 pounds, with brown hair and green or hazel eyes. She wore glasses and was last seen in a blue sweatshirt, blue jeans, and a blue down-filled jacket, and brown lace-up boots. John was 3 feet tall, 47 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. He was last seen in a green winter coat with blue cuffs. Sandy and John Jacobson went missing on November 16, 1996, and as of May 2025, they remain missing and their case remains unsolved.